that's what I try to tell people too. Like, there's no stress-free job, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur or a law enforcement or a bartender, different stresses, and those stresses weigh, probably equally from where you are in life. But, I think being an entrepreneur, does free you up a little bit, but you do have your own new set of stresses and worries.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. In this podcast, we interview incredible entrepreneurs that shine the light on people that are either in business and they're struggling, or they want to think about becoming an entrepreneur, but they don't know how. So today we have a classic, amazing example of those entrepreneurs. Keith, brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, David, thanks for having me.
Keith, tell me, can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Sure. My name is Keith Nelson. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. What I do for a living, that's a trick question. I do a couple things, but mainly my focus is on investment real estate and surrounding vertical businesses.
Investment real estate. So you buy properties and rent them, or you buy properties and resell them? What was the main line of business?
We have a private equity fund. We mainly buy and hold. It's an open pool, blind pool fund. We have everything from apartments to hotels to self-storage, and we just look for opportunities and acquire them.
That's fantastic. How long have you been doing this?
This is about 2014.
2014. And what did you do before that?
Before that, we need more than a hour-long show. I was actually a drug enforcement special agent in New York for a number of years. I became a teacher. I authored a book called Missed Ops. It's about missing on opportunities and looking back and learning from other people's mistakes. Before I got into real estate. So I've, had the entrepreneurial mindset, but it's unfortunate. I spent a lot of years in the civil service sector because that's what I was raised to believe was the right path for me. So it wasn't until probably my early 30s where I realized that, I had to take the leap of faith and jump into something with both feet and kind of burn the boats behind me type deal.
It's fascinating because stories like yours really motivates me and shines the light to people that they feel trapped in a profession that they might not be liking at all. To give you an idea, I was 10 years in corporate, thinking about my business the whole 10 years.
Yeah.
I tried to run on my own when I finished college, and I just failed miserably. I almost went bankrupt. By a miracle, somebody bought my business and paid all my debt. So I got scared, so I went into corporate. But I always wanted to become my own, right? And now I have somebody in front of me that you became a professional enforcement officer. Tell me, how did you get into that? Because to have a profession like that and have spent so many years is very hard. And to make a decision that you are going to do business after that, that's going to be very scary. So, what happened to you after high school? What was in your mind?
Yeah, so it's actually that's what motivated me to write a book on missing opportunities, because I grew up in a middle class neighborhood on Long Island, New York, and both my parents were in education. I had grandfathers that were in law enforcement, so pretty much my whole family was in the public service, business. And, I was just raised to think that going to school, getting good grades, going to college, getting a job with health insurance and a pension was the best path. And it wasn't until I actually, did it and accomplished it, after being there and looking around, kind of looking at my future, that I realized, this is not for me. I'm going to get bored of anything that doesn't let me, be creative and break outside the box. So, even though it was a cool job, being a DEA agent, I had a badge and a gun in New York. I mean, some things were exciting, but I just looked at my future and I said, you know what, I need to do something for myself. So yeah, I took the leap of faith. I gave up the steady paycheck, the health insurance, the pension, and yeah, I bet on myself, and knock on wood, so far it's worked out pretty well.
Did you have a family to support already when you made that decision, or you were on your own?
No, my wife, I had support. Yeah. My wife supported me, enough for me to say, hey, I'm gonna jump into real estate full time. We didn't have much savings at all. And I think I took all of our savings and I invested it in our first, it was like a 12-unit apartment complex. That was our first deal that we bought. I took everything we had, put it in there. So she did have an occupation, but her job was up and down. It was commission only. So if I didn't get something going soon, we were in some trouble. So at the time we had a 1.5-year-old. But I knew if I waited any longer, the decision would have been harder to make. So I had to make the leap right there.
It's fascinating, and congratulations on your courage. It must have been such a moment of decision, especially with a little kid and a wife, and having economical uncertainty is very traumatic, and not knowing where your next paycheck is coming from. This is what stopped most people. This is what delayed me for 10 years. Because I was the main breadwinner. Like, I had 3 little kids at home with my wife. She was staying at home mom. When she got back to university, she graduated for computer science. And until she was able to get a full-time job with benefits, that was the only thing that allowed me to actually go and try on my own, right? So you did it even without that. I had that safety net. You didn't have that. And you believed enough in yourself that you could actually pull this off, right?
Yeah. And I see people all the time wanting to make that leap, and it's just they have too many personal responsibilities. Like, having 3 kids and a wife at home, it limits your options. So unless you have a deep savings account, it's sometimes impossible to make that leap. So so now I'm in the bit. We have a commercial brokerage business, and we see people come in all the time and say, hey, I want to make the leap to full commission. I completely open book and honest with them. Like, look, it's going to be a grind, and you may have a nervous twitch for a year until you got to get your feet, your bearings. But it is satisfying, once you complete it. But it's unfortunate that everyone is not able to have that opportunity. But I think that's taught. I don't know what your upbringing was, but mine was, no, you don't do that. You go for the steady, stable paycheck, and you don't try to rock the boat. You don't take any chances.
So it's funny because my father had 7 businesses before he passed away.
Oh,
and
wow.
He was so traumatized by his life. He told me, I may not leave you money when I die, but I'm going to leave you an education. And so he paid for me all the way up until I started university. Then I paid for my own university, but he made sure that I went to the best schools when I was in high school. And when I failed at my first business and I got my first job, my dad says, okay, good. You got rid of that entrepreneur mentality. Now go get a steady job and stay there and be peaceful. Because his whole life was up and down. And, out of those 7 businesses, 6 failed, right? And this is a 65-year-old giving me advice, and he was just trying to protect me, right? And my first job was for also public services. I was a developer for the Waterloo Board of Education. So it was a public job, and it had a beautiful promise of a pension 35 years down the road with 80% of my salary and all these benefits. And I remember when I quit that job, one of my bosses said, be very careful what you're doing because you're giving away your future. And in my head was, this is crazy. How can I think about a beautiful retirement 35 years down the road doing the same thing that I'm doing now? I was going crazy already after 2 years.
Yeah.
But to the point of my boss and to the point of my dad, having a business is not for everybody. You have to have that vocation that there has to be this incredible energy in you that knows that you can figure it out, and learning to ride the ups and downs, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Actually, that's advice that I give too is don't get too high when things are really good, and don't get too hard on yourself when things are really bad. You have to kind of have an even keel through the whole thing. And it's hard to have that mindset when things are super great or not so great.
Yeah, when things are awesome, I remember when I started, things were awesome, but I was so scared, man. I was so scared I would not spend a penny. And that actually allowed me to go through the first 3 years, which were the hardest, right? But I
Sure.
took it to extreme, and then like I was just accumulating money without spending it, to the point that it started to corrupt my family, right? Because I was still in this fight and flight mode, which is not good. Like, you have to have a balance, right? But it's not easy, because I never knew when my next paycheck was going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah. Know where you're coming from.
Yeah. So tell me, how was those first, like, how long did it take you to break even, to start, or to at least start bringing some income home, right after you decided to quit the police force?
I think a better question would be, how long did it take me to kind of replace what I left?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it took me, I'd say, about a year and a half to hit that marker where I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. Maybe 2 years. A year and a half is a little ambitious, but yeah, it was about 2 years where I said, okay, I made the right choice, and now I'm going to put the pedal, to the floor.
Beautiful. Now, from enforcing law to real estate investing is a huge gap. How do you learn about this, and how do you find your passion? Like, how did you get into real estate?
I think my passion is entrepreneurial, more than anything. Real estate was kind of a means to an end, where I started investing and saying, I need to replace my income with passive investments. So that's how I kind of got into real estate. And it just, all the businesses that kind of spun off of that were just came naturally. So we opened a commercial brokerage business. Then we merged with a commercial lending company. We started a commercial insurance. We have our fund, and we're exploring some things with blockchain and tokenomics in there now. So I think that was kind of my baseline, and then just learning everything around it and what made transactions easier or more profitable. That's how I got into those other businesses. But I wouldn't say I always had a passion for real estate, but I always had a passion to be creative, and real estate was an avenue to do that, because no two deals are the same. And it frustrates me. A lot of my competition is, they specialize in one very small window, a box of real estate. To me, learning about all the other asset classes is what made us good managers and syndicators and fund managers. Learning from all those other aspects and applying what we learned to the assets that we hold now has really, given us an edge on the competition, in my opinion.
That's fantastic. How do you find the money for the first property? That must have been hard.
Well, actually funny, because it came from a lot of people I worked with in law enforcement. So there was 5 of us. We all chipped in. I was the hands-on person in South Carolina, and our capital came from New York. That's where my investment brand came in. It's called Dual City Investments. So New York and Greenville were the 2 cities, the dual cities. And yeah, so we put the capital together, bought the first complex, and learned everything I had to learn on the fly. And then that brought me into the commercial brokerage world, and knowing how to locate good deals and identify good assets. So
incredible. You're the true definition of an entrepreneur, because what you like is the creativity, right? So it doesn't really matter what is the subject of the business, as long as it's a business where you can invest your creativity on, it'll prosper, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
I'm beginning to learn that myself. Like, I always been a software architect all my life, and now that I work on the business, not in the business, I have the opportunity to explore other ventures. And because of my scarcity mentality, also, actually, I got into real estate too. So what I started doing is with all the profits of the company, I started buying single family homes to rent, right? Just to create passive income. And 2014 came around and I realized that with a modest budget, I could watch Netflix for the rest of my life.
That's not fun. You'll get bored of that real quick.
I know. I tried actually for 5 years. I said, okay. So basically, my wife and I are set. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about having yachts and sports cars and private jets. No, I'm just talking about I receive more money than what I can, without what I need to survive, basically.
Yeah.
Which is a big differentiator, right? But that relaxed my whole business strategy. So the next 5 years, I just took my kids out of school in the winter and we homeschooled them and we traveled the world. And I reduced the business to a point where it was a beautiful lifestyle business. And
That's
then
awesome.
I met Dan Sullivan, and now I have this 10x goal again, right? But it is beautiful because if you look at our real estate business, this is the one that has gained the most value. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it for that. I did it for the passive income. But now even the passive income is getting exponential, right?
Yep.
So I'm beginning to realize what you're doing, right? Like it's the entrepreneurial mindset that you can apply to different lines of businesses, right?
That's right.
Tell me, problems. I've almost been bankrupt 3 times. What has been the biggest problem in business and how did you get out of it?
Let's see. Well, I've almost been bankrupt twice, so I'm right there. The biggest problem, I guess the biggest problem was getting started, actually. It was making that 100% leap, because in between when I was law enforcement and real estate, I became a teacher, and I became a teacher because I was like, oh, I got summers off. I could get out at 3 o'clock. I can learn about real estate or whatever I was going to go into, and it would give me the ability to have that salary and learn at the same time. Where in actuality, and I did that for 5 years, and that wasn't the case. It wasn't until I was 100% into it that things started to go in the right direction. And like I said, I was always entrepreneurial. I kind of always want to do things on the side. But even when I wrote my book, I had another job while I did it, and I realized, what, if I would have committed to promoting that book and going on all the shows and everything, maybe that would have been a success. Maybe I would have sold more than whatever the 50 copies that I sold. But it's a leap of faith, mindset, and if you have a plan B, it's very hard to succeed with plan A type deal. So I know it's cliche, and a lot of people say, burn the boats, burn the bridges, whatever. But in my case, that was 100% true. And I tried doing it, building something on the side. It just didn't work until I was 100% committed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, right after I finished my first business and I got a full-time job, 3 months into the full-time job, finally somebody came to me asking to write a point of sale system for them. But I was already a full-time employee, so I had to go ask my boss if I could do it after work. And they said yes, they changed my contract. And I always had a gig after work. So that allowed for my wife to go to university and become a homemaker. But I was working full-time plus another 4 hours after work. And I did that for 10 years. So I never prospered in the business, and I was very exhausted at work. I always prosper at work because that was my main thing. But it wasn't until I actually decided to just let go of the full-time job and focus 100% on the business that I really started to grow.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Right? You know what I like doing a lot is sometimes I take Uber rides. I love talking to the Uber drivers because it's a beautiful way to try out entrepreneurship, isn't it? And half of them hate it, and some of them say they are finally free. But it really shows like, okay, like you have the resources, you are free, you turn on the app, you don't know if you're going to get rides. Some days you will, some days you won't, right? It's a good taste of how it's like to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you find One of the reasons why I became a business owner was to have freedom of time. Did you find with your own case that instead of getting more time, you actually worked a lot more than before?
Oh, sure, yeah. I forget the exact saying, but it's something like, you know, work a 40-hour job is like part-time when you're an entrepreneur, because you're really never shut off completely, so even on vacation, if your mind's wandering or you're checking a text or an email or something like that, you're not at the office, but your mind's still in that, in that direction. But and I just take that as part of the lifestyle. But I do have more flexibility. Like if I want to, take a vacation, next month or next week, I don't have to check in with a boss or anything like that. So I do have that, which is nice. But I don't think I ever really turn off completely. And I know many people, including the Genius Network, and they tell you need to shut down, and you need to get away and reflect and all that. But I just look at it as just a way of life, So I gave up the 9 to 5, set hours, but I took on other responsibilities, and that's what I try to tell people too. Like, there's no stress-free job, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur or law enforcement or a bartender, different stresses, and those stresses weigh, probably equally from where you are in life. But, I think being an entrepreneur, does free you up a little bit, but you do have your own new set of stresses and worries.
Yeah. I have a friend, you're completely right. And everything brings stress. Like, life is stressful. Well, we got to learn how to deal with that stress so it doesn't eat us alive. It's just use that energy for your advantage, right? I have a friend that he tried to go private. He did have some gigs outside of work, and it didn't work for him. So now he's a senior architect for the Toronto Police, and he couldn't be happier. And he still has stress, but he has a salary, and he has a month vacations a year. And he's telling me that maybe if I would have given it more time to my business, I would have been more free. But this is was my calling, and I love this job. And he's been there for 7 years now. So it doesn't mean, so my point is, like, it doesn't matter what you do. You have to be happy with what you're doing. For me, it's entrepreneurship. I couldn't fit in the box like you, right? I wanted to do things certain way, and I had this corporate structure that was always blocking me.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
That's wonderful. What's in the future for you?
Well, the market's kind of volatile right now. Not a lot of transactions happening in my world right now, so we're kind of just waiting and seeing. But I'm excited. I think the investment real estate market is due for a correction, and we're ready and positioned to take advantage of it. So
That's wonderful.
It's been a long time coming, and hopefully that accelerates us to 10x in the next couple of years.
It's beautiful. I have a friend that he started buying real estate in 2010.
Oof, it's a good time.
And he was lucky enough to get loans from the government because he was cleaning up shop, like he was buying all the foreclosures. I think he's got 1,000 units now, but it was just because of the recession, right? So it's the first time that I saw that a major recession is the best opportunity to become rich if you know what you're doing and if you have the resources, right?
As long as you weren't greedy in the times where everything was going straight up, yeah, you could take advantage. But there's a whole section of people and businesses that just thought those good times were going to continue forever, and there will be some opportunities, but because of those people that maybe people like us will have more opportunity in that arena.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because it's true. Like, hard times will always come, and the people that are prepared and they know the cycles, they are the ones that take the most advantage of it. So, see, you are excited because your industry is going to go down. How crazy is that, right? I bet a lot of your competitors are like, oh my God, we have all this investment and now it's going to go down, instead of thinking, well, we can buy more now.
But it's actually the way, I don't want to get too technical, but the way my latest fund was set up, which was the beginning of this year, was to be open-ended, where there's no closed raise period and there's no time frame to sell assets. So this fund can go on in perpetuity, where we can take advantage of market cycles. So we were ahead of we saw it coming probably a little too early, but we prepared for it, and now we're set up to take advantage of it.
That's fascinating. In terms of investment, what's your ratio between debt and capital investment? Like how much leverage do you use?
Probably globally in the fund about 60% leveraged.
That's not bad. A lot of people that I know, they're leveraged 80%. And I'm thinking, like, if anything happens with the interest rates, you lose everything.
Yeah. We have a lot of free and clear assets, so we can pull lines of credit, and if investors want out, we can, cash them out. So we have that, and that's kind of what levels out our portfolio. But yeah, we keep that in the forefront to not be over leveraged.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give somebody that is thinking of jumping into business right now, and they have a good full-time job with retirement packages and all that?
Right now, October 22, I might be a little cautious about starting something just this second. I would probably say, wait a couple months, see how 22 ends, going into 23, and then there may be great opportunity to start something. And that's most successful people start when other people aren't, right? So be fearful when everyone's being greedy, and be greedy when everyone's being fearful. So right now I think we're kind of in that middle ground, but I would probably just get your plan together, be ready to execute, and see where 2023 starts, and what the economy looks like, and then make a decision if you're going to leap into it or wait it out. And look, if we enter a deeper recession, you might not have a choice. You might get laid off, and maybe that is the sign to leap into your own thing.
That will be the silver lining, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Keith, brother, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to abuse it. One last question. If you had access to a billboard in the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Access to that. Well, is this a promotion, or is this like a motivational
advice, right? Advice, yeah.
The advice would be, I guess, would be, be willing to bet on yourself. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity, because there's not going to be a perfect opportunity, but be willing to bet on yourself.
That's fabulous. The one thing that my mentor told me is try it. Try to run on your own, because the worst thing that could happen is you can go back and always get a job again. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I think once you're in this world, it's kind of hard to go back to a 9-to-5.
I'm unemployable. I know that for sure now. I'm too spoiled in business,
Yeah. Sure.
Keith, brother, thank you so much for your time. If people want to find you, or want to, if they're interested in investing in your fund or in your real estate business, how they can find you?
I guess the website, my contact info is up there. It's dualcityinvestments.com.
dualcityinvestments.com. Super easy. Brother, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for making this world a better place, and blessings and much prosperity to you.
Thank you, David. Hope to talk to you soon.
Awesome. Blessings. Cheers.
Okay. Take care.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.